Welcome to Philosophy from the Frontline. This podcast explores the intersection of philosophy, entrepreneurship, and veteran transition. Join us as we delve into the minds of successful entrepreneurs who have made the journey from military service into small business ownership. Our guests will share their insights, experience, and unique perspectives on life, business, and the world around us. Through deep conversations and thought-provoking discussions, we hope to inspire and empower our listeners to tackle their own challenges and achieve their dreams. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the world of entrepreneurship from a veteran's point of view. This is Philosophy from the Frontline, and we'll see you on the high ground. Welcome back, everybody. This is Philosophy from the Frontline, episode number 110 with Jay Setchell. So Jay is an author. He's a former Marine, and he's got some pretty interesting stories. His very robust background. Like, I will not do it any justice trying to do an intro. So I'll just pass it over to you and tell us about yourself, where you come from, what led you to serve in the Marines, and then we'll spiral into some of the other things that you have going on. Thanks.
Boy, Rob, now you got me on a hard spot because I usually let somebody intro, so I'm not into that. I'm a farm kid from a working farm up in north central Illinois. Originally, I'm in central Texas now and have been for the last about 35 years. And but I came off a working farm with lots of cattle, airplanes. We did a lot of ag spraying. So I really was raised with a lot of responsibility, sense of urgency. If the old 10 two-letter words, if you don't, if it is to be, it is up to me, because, it's like, my dad would say, the weeds aren't going to pull themselves, or the thistles aren't going to get hoed out by themselves or whatever. So you were climbing silos and chipping frozen silage off when it was 35 below zero, or in the summer when it's 95 or 98 and it's humid, and you're walking bean fields to chop corn out of the beans. And, a lot of that, some people understand, some don't. But I stayed busy. And then when I was in high school, starting my sophomore year, I worked at a small agriculture factory making grain bins and pickup reels, grain dryers and pickup reels for combines. And school got out at 3:45. I started work at 4. I worked till 12:30. I got home about 1 o'clock, got to bed, got back up at 5:30, helped my dad with his chores, and I did my chores, because if I didn't help him with his chores and the cattle in the morning, and he had to do mine at nighttime, he would charge me for it if I didn't help him. Well, because he said time is money and money is time. It's responsibility.
That's fair.
And so that was discipline for me to get up. So, I mean, you're up and going, you get showered, get a bite to eat, and head back to school and do it all over again. And, I got out of high school, and I wanted to enlist in the Marine Corps right away, because my primary reason was my cousin Bob was my hero, and he was 7 years older than I was. And he served from 60 to 64. And he said, whatever you do, do not go in the Marine Corps. Never. Don't do it. So, that's like telling a kid to stay out of the candy bowl, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was on my mind the whole time. And I've still got some of the old Sergeant Rock comics from the early 50s with the guys shooting the Japs in the trees, and the Korean War and all that stuff. I've got some that are, they're 70 some years old comic books.
Wow.
And I just kind of, it was the tough way. It was the hard way. It was, and I didn't have an easy life on the farm. I mean, we had a pretty good sized farm, and you feed about 1,200 head of cattle a year. That's a lot back in the 50s and the 60s. And I was born in 49. So I've been through many decades of different things, but I enlisted in the Marine Corps in November of 67. And my grandfather had a heart attack, and we needed to get the crops out and the crops back in the spring. And so we went down. My dad went with me, and we went down and talked to the recruiter. I don't remember where they were. They were in LaSalle, Illinois. I don't remember whereabouts or who it was or anything, but they had they just come out with a new program called the Delayed Enlistment Program. And I wasn't trying to get out of the Marine Corps. I was just trying to, can I put it off for 3 or 4 or 5 months, And and that being said, that's what happened. I got put on the delayed enlistment, got called up pretty early in 68, and went in. And I lasted, I started out in I thought when we got out of boot camp, we got our EGAs, which is real big in the Marine Corps. You know, you get that Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. That's
Mhm.
the kicker, boy. That's the that's the thing you fight for. You know, it's earned and never given kind of thing,
Yeah.
and which everybody out there has heard more than often than not when they were military. But I started out. I thought he said I was going to be an armorer. So I thought, oh man, armor. I'm going to be working on rifles. I'm going to go to Quantico. I'm going to do all this. Well, he didn't say armor or armorer. He said armor. So I ended up in tanks
Oh, wow.
and in M48s and M60s. We had 48s in Nam, but well, long story. I finished tank school, track school, and turret school, and a tank commander class or course. That because if you did really good in the previous ones, you got to,
Go
you
to the
may
next
not be
one.
a tank
Yeah.
commander, but you're going to
Yeah.
be trained to be one. And as time went on, well, it ended up that I watched a drug deal go down or saw one go down. I was in staging battalion getting ready to go to Nam, and I was assigned to Bravo Company, 3rd Tanks, 3rd Marines up at Con TN, right on the DMZ. And unfortunately, in a way, I didn't go to that because we had about a 70% casualty rate on tanks with RPGs and all that.
Mhm.
But I ended up in criminal intelligence. I ended up in a CID unit and in a pill and a drug unit.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I was covert ops in that's that's kind of where I ended up.
Oh, wow.
And so
Hmm.
from there, then the shit hit the fan November 12, 1969. I I had a corporal working for me that he had his own little a group that he was following, and I just thought, well, heck, I'll stop and see Stitch, and he was in Oceanside, and I went to his house, and make a long story short, he wasn't in his place. He'd been married 6 months, 4 months with his wife was in California, and I heard her scream, and I just was looking in the front door of the house, and the door was open, but well, it wasn't a house, it was an old barracks kind of like thing, I
Hmm.
mean, we got the end of the crap, maybe 400 square feet, I don't know. And but I went out the back door, went down the side to the right, got down there. I saw one of the guys running away that had been involved with Stitz, and they'd been beating on him. They'd found him because he was,
Oh, no.
when you're CID and you're following a group and you're covert, you're putting your life in their hands. I mean,
Yeah.
literally. And they cut his head open pretty bad down the left side and down past his ear. His ear was hanging off down into his neck, and he was bleeding really bad. So I had her get some. I told her to get some alcohol and a towel because I needed to see what the problem was the best I
Yeah.
could. And even though alcohol make it bleed worse, I had to get it cleaned. And I could see that it looked like it missed the jugular, but typical what you went through too. You go through a medical course and medical
Yeah.
classes, and so I got her to I got him, I got him up in a fireman's carry, got him to the car, got him in the passenger side. I had a '66 Ford Galaxy 500 XL, and I got him in the bucket seat on the right side. I put her in the middle. I had her put her arm around his head and his neck, and then put as much pressure where it was bleeding the most on the wound, because I didn't know if he'd live. I mean, I didn't
Yeah.
know. Well, on the way back to the hospital, and the only hospital I knew of was the Naval Hospital of Pendleton, and it wasn't that far, maybe 12 minutes. Uh, Make a long story short, we hit a semi. A
Wow.
semi pulled out across the road. Had
Jeez.
it was nighttime. It
Mhm.
it had no side lights. It had no side markers. It had no reflectors. It had nothing. And there were 4 or 5 cars behind us. Now I don't remember any of that, but one of the car closest behind us was a full-bird colonel, and he told and I've got it written down yet, but he told the state police. He said if he had to hit him, we would have, because we couldn't
Mhm.
see it either
Wow.
until we saw the sparks. But it took my 17-foot 4-inch Galaxy 500 XL down to less than 10 feet, and then the car blew up and burned, and
Wow.
we were all inside.
Jeez. That's pretty
That's
traumatic.
that
Yeah.
was yeah, and we had 3 Marine officers, all captains, were on their way to Vietnam, and they were in staging battalion, which I was supposed to be in, and they saw a reflection up ahead and they didn't know what it was. Well, when they got closer, they could see here there was a car on fire. And, you know, a lot of I think every branch in the service can wear their utilities or uniform, utilities in particular off base. And Marines can't. We just, so they didn't know we were Marines or civilians or whatever,
Yeah.
but they knew they had to get us out because we were already. And Walter, I just got back a month ago, and he's not doing well now. He was already bad, but he's doing pretty bad. And
Mhm.
he's the last living Marine that helped pull us out of the car. And when we first connected about 10 years ago, and they thought we all had stayed dead, because
Wow.
when he pulled us out, I was dead. And but he explained how they had to dig my head out of the steering wheel. It was like a pumpkin got smashed
Wow.
into it, and how they pulled us out. And he said, I'm sure we broke some of your bones because we couldn't get the door open because it was too hot. The fire was too much, and it was burning under the dash, it was burning in the trunk, and your leg was on fire. So that was the only light we had to work with, to get you out. So once they finally did get me out, Linda, Stitz's wife, came out pretty easy, but the tire had broken loose, ripped out of the trunk, came through the thing, bounced off the roof. They said it took the top part of her back of her head off.
Oh
She
no.
slid it. She slid across the gear shift and ripped all of her female parts out and up into her stomach. She ended up being in a coma for 18 months and then passed away.
Wow.
And they got me back. I had a real bad out of body, very, very violent out of body experience, watching doctors walk away from me and not gonna help me. I was done. But another doctor came in the office or came into the emergency room, right wherever I was at, and it was an oral surgeon, and I just know this. I don't. It's like I knew it from because watching it. I don't know it. The guy's name was a Dr. Gray, and he
Hmm.
had his navy whites on. Well, they said he's done. We can't get it. There's no heartbeat. There's no blood. There's nothing. No blood pressure. No anything. And so through whatever he did, he determined that my lungs. I had so many broken ribs. My lungs were punctured in multiple places. I
Mhm.
had drowned in my own blood, and it had crunched my heart tight, so it had no room to expand to beat.
Hmm.
So that's why I had no blood pressure, no heartbeat, no breath, no nothing. And he cut a tracheotomy here, and I just expelled blood. And I remember that from being up with my back against the ceiling because I was cussing and swearing and,
Hmm.
you bastards, get back here. Don't leave me. I'm alive. I'm alive. Don't let me go. And after the blood really squirted out a lot, and then he pushed on me, I recall that, and more came out. I don't remember anything else, Rob. It was more of did I go back on my body? Apparently so.
Hmm.
And then I was in a coma for a month, and then they put me back in another coma for 2 weeks, but I was really, 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 really bad.
Wow.
But
That's an impressive backstory for real. Like it's interesting to hear that because again, I think a lot of people relate their trauma to, oh, I couldn't find a parking spot in the front of the building, or they screwed up,
it's I
they screwed up my order at Starbucks or something to that effect. And I think a lot of people are quick to quick to label something traumatic when it actually isn't. Like
no I yeah.
listening to your story, it's like, wow, like I've seen some things and that still is it's disturbing in the sense that, like a traumatic loss of life is nothing to be trifled with. And I
It's no, no, and I want to throw. I mean, in Stitz, they couldn't get him out because that side of the car was on fire more. Now
wow.
he didn't get as damaged as I was. Uh, Broken bones in my left foot. My
Mhm.
bottom of my leg was completely broken apart, and my left foot was turned backwards, and all sorts of stuff. And but he got burned over 60% of his body,
Wow.
and the door popped open when they were trying to wrap their clothes up around it to hold pull on it, and
Yeah.
somehow it popped open. They drug him over. He lived. He went through a lot of skin grafts. He stayed. They kept him in the Marine Corps. He stayed in the Marine Corps another
Wow.
6 years, and he was a staff sergeant. He was up for gunny, and he got out, and then he worked at as a contractor, civilian contractor on an Army base somewhere out in the greater Baltimore area.
Wow.
And then he passed away from a heart attack a year ago this month.
Oh, wow.
But the one thing that bothered me the most out of that, from hearing from Walter, was the thing that really brought it to my, oh God, made me cry. He was telling me that after they had gotten us out, and after the people finally got there in the ambulances or whoever, and they were starting to clean them up. They were walking to these ambulances, and they had skin hanging off their hands and their arms, and they knew they'd been burned some, but they didn't know to what extent their injuries were. And when they were getting cleaned off, they found out it wasn't their skin; it was our skin.
Wow.
They had been pulling on our bodies so hard, they pulled our skin right off.
Wow.
So, that just led, wow, talk about, and Walter still has nightmares about it. And when I saw him a month ago, he cried, I cried. I mean, it was just like I said, we reconnected after 10 years, or after 10 years ago, after 40 some years.
Yeah.
And it's how do you say thank you to someone that saved your life and put their life on the line? And all three of them, through my parents, got a hold of our congressman, and they all three, through the Marine Corps, were awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Medal for Heroism, which is equivalent to the Medal of Honor, but not for combat. It's for civilian action. And so it was, but you just live with it. You deal with it, and a year in the hospital is a long goddamn time. Trust me.
Yeah, it really is. And I think there's something to be said, and having been in, some sketchy situations when deployed, and like pulling somebody off on an objective or getting them medically evac or whatever and getting them taken care of, certainly was nowhere near as intense as your experience. And I'm sure that the gentleman that pulled you out of that car, traumatic, yes, but I'm sure that they were incredibly thankful that they were able to do something, right? Because I think there's a time and place, particularly in significant traumatic situations, where sometimes it's just like paralysis, because you're paralyzed because you're overthinking about the situation. Is there something that I can do? And sometimes the best action is to take action, and inaction is an action as well. But usually if you don't move or do something positively in that situation, it can just get worse, and so it truly is compelling to hear your story, because not a lot of people have a story like that, and the impact of the interconnectivity of those people. You probably have loved those people your entire life and haven't had contact with them, because of that.
Yeah, sure.
And
exactly.
And so it's kind of like, shout out to all like the doctors and medical people and the folks that are just willing to stick their nose into situations like that and help people survive. Because I think there's a trend these days where, I'm not going to look over there because then somebody will expect me to do something, and I think, service members in general, people that volunteer, whether that be, law enforcement, fire department, medical, it's not glamorous. It never is. But being able to put yourself in a position where you can be helpful is a huge part of, some people's makeup. And those that have that makeup tend to serve in those capacities.
Well, and you said something a couple of sentences ago that, to me, and I do it today. I have to do it in my power wheelchair because I can't walk, and and whatnot. But to those that run to the sound of fire, or the sound of terror, or the sound of a scream, that's what got me to go. He'd have been dead. I could have gotten in my car and driven away, and I would have never known it. But when I heard the scream, I had to go to it. And I think that that's an important fact too, that a lot of people, depending on what, we know that there's some even service members out there, much less just regular people, that they're not going to do it. I don't want to be involved. And then, you mentioned about, action and inaction and so on. And it's keeping your bearing, keeping your common sense, let's do what's right. No, don't freak out over it. and and move ahead. That's where a lot of people lose it at that point, you know.
Well, and it goes back to, and we talk about it all the time, and I have conversations with people and it's like, hey, you know why we send you to school in the military? And the reason why we want our officers and senior enlisted guys and as many people as we can to be educated, because it's stress inoculation, right? Like it's not the same as, writing a paper for a master's degree is not the same as being in a gunfight. However, if I've had to process information in a short period of time under duress, the more sets and reps that I have of that, the better it is, on the backside when I have to do it for real, and I think that's one of the things that's like a lost art in our society, is because, like, I'm a Gen Xer, so we were feral kids. Like, we ran around like we were talking about this with a friend of mine the other day. So what happened if you accidentally left your key at home and you got locked out of your house? Well, you figured out what to do until your parents got home.
Oh, yeah,
right.
yeah.
Right. There's like problem solving 101.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
crap. Well, I'm going to go to my friend's house and call my parents on, this is back when phones hung on the wall, you know what I mean? And I'd go to my friend's house, call my parents and be like, hey, I'm over at, Jimmy Joe Bob's because I locked myself out of the house. I'll see you at 6.
Yeah.
And that was,
I think what you're saying is funny, because I mean, yeah, I agree. It's like people today, well, for some time now, and I call it the microwave society, because they want everything now. And they have for the last 30 or 40 years, it seems like, and it's gotten worse, but it's like they can't solve the problem. And they're basic, simple, little things, because mom and dad do it for them so much and so often that you lose that art.
Yeah. So we used to, you have two different kind of schools of thought. So you had helicopter parents that would just hover over their kids and make sure everything goes away. And then you have lawnmower parents, which are like cutting down all the obstacles to make sure that their kids have this smooth path of life. But, I think on more than one occasion, multiple writers, like you talk to anybody, adversity makes you stronger, regardless of what it is, right? Like
100%.
And I think that's one of the things that it's why people are, it's why like a large portion of veterans are resilient, and I say that, and it's like, combat being what it is, guys that survive that are some pretty tough dudes, regardless of circumstance, like regardless of unit, branch affiliation, whatever it is. Like, if you make it through a tour downrange in a sticky situation, like, hey, we respect your service. Is it all the same? No. Like, I can tell you my service is different from your service, which is different from people that are serving today. And, the good part about it is that those diverse experiences can lead to bear fruit. The bad part of it is when I start to try and make comparisons, right? And it's a cliched phrase, but comparison is the thief of joy. So if I'm running around trying to say like, oh, I'm better than this person because I did the following 87 things, that means there's a huge inadequacy in me that makes me point those 87 things out on other people, rather than just saying like, yeah, man, I did some cool stuff when I was in the suit, but it's no more different or better than anyone else. And that comes with wisdom though, and I can say that now as an old man, rather than when I was 19 years old, I would never have come to this conclusion. I was like, look, if you're not a paratrooper and airborne ranger, I don't care about you. Like, that's the way it used to be. But now, hindsight being 2020, I've seen many successful people that didn't have the same qualifications as I did, but they were great teammates. They worked hard. They had a work ethic. They were driven. They wanted to be successful in the organization. And that tops any skill badge that anyone can wear, and that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about the Marine Corps, is because it's like, up until MARSOC came around, there were no special Marines, right? You were a Marine. That's it.
Well, you're still a Marine in MARSOC. I mean, MARSOC is still, Marine Special Operations Command, but now they're called the Raiders, or partially. But you're still a rifleman.
Yeah.
You're still a rifleman. I don't care if you're a full bird colonel or a 3-star general or you're a gunnery sergeant, you're a rifleman. I don't care if you're a cook or you're a pilot, you're a rifleman. Then you're a Marine. You happen to have that opportunity to have that rank or that job or whatever, but you are a rifleman. And that's the common ground that makes us, the Marine Corps, separate from a lot of, well, from the other branches.
Yeah.
That's just and it's not better than, it's just, that's how it is.
Yeah, and I think that's the distinction of that branch of service, right? The Marine Corps has that unity. Like when you see Marines, they are Marines. There's not like, well, what unit is that guy in? Doesn't matter. He's Marine, right? Like that's just who they are. And I can appreciate that as an organization and that identity that they carry with them, because again, I think, you know, carrying your identity wherever you are is very important. And again, it goes back into like the whole transition piece. And so like, I'm assuming after, you know, you spent a year in the hospital, there was some paperwork being done saying like, hey, look, like we're gonna have to let, you know, Jay out of the Marine Corps at some point. And I'm sure that there was a strong desire on your part to stay in, but like, how did you take that news? Because I know like it's different for different pools of veterans. Like if a guy that makes it to his ETS and he ETSs and only does one tour, his feelings are a little bit different from a guy that medically retires, or a guy that just retires because he did, you know, a full term of 20 or 20 plus years in the military.
Right.
But, you know, I'm assuming that feeling was pretty challenging. And then knowing that it's like, okay, I went through this traumatic experience. One of the things that I identified with as a young man is being in the Marines, and now that's being taken away from me. So like, how was that transition point for you when you had to depart, or were you more concerned about like just recovery physically than you were with staying in the suit?
I think more of it was just a recovery issue. And I got to remember, that's 57 years ago for me. 57 years ago. And when I wrote my book, I had to think back about things I've been trying to forget for 55 years. And I don't want to remember them. And we didn't have, as I mentioned before the show, we didn't have any psych. We had no PT. We had no OT. We had nothing, nothing. If you could stand and you could get leg braces on and you could hobble around on a crutches, they put you out. You were gone. I mean, if you could do that on Monday, Thursday you were out of the Corps. And
Wow.
I knew guys in Vietnam that on a Monday they get their orders to go home, and on Thursday they were walking the streets of San Francisco or Chicago or their hometown in 3 days.
Yeah.
They were gone.
And again, I had a conversation with another gentleman who's a Vietnam era veteran, and one of the things that, you know, is stark contrast between today's military and the
Right.
military that you guys served in is the aftercare, you know. And
Oh,
we're still not great at it, but we're better than we were, you know, in the 60s and 70s. And unfortunately, you know, it's one of those problem sets that it's going to take, you know, it's going to take something drastic to really get the rest of our society to wake up to everything that goes on, or the trials of a service member, because not a lot of people serve, you know.
uh, yeah, it's I got a 3 or 4 of my friends around here are both, well, I've got 3 or 4 that are missing both their legs. One of them up into his innards, EOD, Marine. All of them are Marines. But Travis asked me if I go down to talk to the Wounded Warrior Battalion down at Brooks Army Medical Center here in San Antonio.
Mhm.
And I said, yeah, I'll go down. He said, well, you know, I want you to talk about resilience and all this stuff. And that's kind of where it's going. And there'll be a group of guys there. And I did. And this is, God, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years ago, something like that. And what I saw down there, Rob, was, I mean, a stack of pizza boxes. I saw computers. I saw monitors. I saw all of this, sorry, crap sitting around, you know. And I heard about these guys talking about when they got out, they were going to start a game ranch. They were going to start a nonprofit fishing club. They were going to do this. They were going to do that and all this. And I got up to talk in front of them. And I was on a walker. I was on a walker for about 18 years. It was before I was in my wheelchair. And um, I cried.
Hmm.
I cried in front of them. I couldn't help it. I cried, and I told them, I said, and I didn't really give them a lot of words of encouragement. It was more words of real life,
Yeah.
because I said, what they're telling you and what you're planning on is, and I just said, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. Once you're out, once you're gone, you are gone. You're with your help, you're going to fight. What I got put on the TDRL. I have no clue why I got put on the temporary disability retired list when I got out of the hospital October 31st, 1970, and I was 12 days shy of having a full year in the hospital or from dying.
Hmm.
So, but why I got put on the TDRL, I don't know. And then 3 years later, you're supposed to either be determined final, permanently retired or back in the service or something.
Yeah.
And back in my day, they offered me in 3 years, they offered me $1,600. And if I took that $1,600, I got nothing else. I
What?
forewent all Veteran
Wow.
Administration benefits. I forewent any retirement. I forget. It was just like I never even existed in the Marine Corps or the
Hmm.
military, period.
Wow.
$1,600. And so I fought that, and I fought the PE board at Great Lakes Naval Base. And the first guy they gave me to go in and represent me in front of the board was a brand new Navy ensign, and I was his first case. And I said, "No, bullshit,
Wow.
bullshit. I
Hmm.
am not dealing with it." So I went over and I went to the Marine Corps liaison's office, and there was a full bird colonel over there. Was getting out. He was getting out, and he had a permanent field promotion to full bird from an E8. I don't know
Wow.
how it happened. I
Hmm.
don't know. It didn't matter.
Interesting.
I told him what my problem was and would he represent me, and he said, "You betcha, Sergeant." And so we went back over, and he went in. And he asked, in the Marine Corps they call it your blouse, your shirt. And so he said, "I want you to open your blouse. I want you to drop your trousers and turn around the best you can." I had leg braces all the way up to the crack of my ass, and I was still on crutches. And this is 4 years later. Well, yeah, let's see, November, December 74. Yeah, but almost 4 years later. And anyhow, he said, "If you can't find that this man is retired and disabled, then I resign my commission, and I'll take this all." Anyhow, the guy was really he
Wow.
got he got he was pissed about it. So anyhow, I went back in. The little light comes on up there. They had a red light and a green light. Green light came on. He said, "Come on, let's go back in." And they found me at X%, and I got a retirement on it. Well,
Hmm.
medical retirement. But
Yeah.
you don't get anything really. I got a different ID card, and I can do certain things, but I don't ever do it because I'm not near. Well, I am near a base now, Lackland or Randolph, but they're still 50 miles away, and I don't go
Yeah.
there. But the thing is that they said, "What percentage of disability are you receiving from the Veterans Administration?" I said 30%. And they said, 30%? You
Wow.
only got 30%? And they said, "You should have been 100 the day you walked out of the hospital."
Yeah.
And so they wrote a letter, and there were two-star admirals. I don't know what rank that is, and one major general in the Marine Corps, and then a full bird, and somebody else signed it, and they signed it on this form that was supposed to go to the DOD and the VA, and I had to just go to a Veterans Administration to get my 100%. This was in order for 100%. So it took about 3 or 4 weeks. I got an appointment. I had to drive through a blizzard up into Wisconsin from Northern Illinois,
Oh.
and I got there on a Monday for my appointment. They didn't get me until Friday, and they found me at 70%. And I'm going like, what in the F is going on? And then they gave me a bottle of Darvon because my back was killing me. My back, they never could address it because
Hmm.
the injury was so bad. So they gave me some Darvon to drug me up and put me at 70%. So I fought my retirement up here on the wall behind me,
Hmm.
right
Yeah, I
up
see
over
it.
there. Okay, it says honorably discharged, blah, 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 and retired December 1st, 1974. And and uh, I didn't get my 100%. I fought that for 17 years. I got my 100%
Wow.
September 1st, 1991.
Wow. That's
It's from
insane.
74 to 91. And I never got a goddamn penny of back pay. I never got anything,
Wow.
nothing.
Hmm.
And my son, when he got out, they did the same thing to him. He was at 90%, and he should have been 100. And I said, "Don't leave the Marine Corps until they get you that," because they had the VA at the hospital at
Yeah.
Lejeune.
Hmm.
Okay. And and they told him, he said, "Well, we don't have your MRIs or at headquarters Marine Corps, and we don't have it. So we'll put you at 90. As soon as you get out, we'll have the MRI shipped to where you're going to be. They'll go and you're at 100. Here's your letter." Well, that didn't happen either. So
Hmm.
I had a guy with the Army that I ran into down here that I know is a good friend of mine, and he had another gentleman, J.R. Garza. He was a sergeant major, Special Forces, Vietnam, and I met with him, and he got a hold of a friend of his in Michigan because that's where my son was at,
Yeah.
and he made the connection, and they went in. He sent somebody with him, and they went into uh, they went to the VA together and all this crap, and he finally got it. But and
Wow.
he had filed the day he got out, or the day he got there. But 2.5 years to get his 100%, and still no back pay, no
Wow.
nothing.
That's
They
crazy.
just, but he did get his 100. But I took 17 years and got nothing.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's interesting that it took that long, but I will say it puts me in a place where it's like, okay, one, scathing indictment of the VA medical system, and I think there's always going to be problems there because there's so many people that work the system that they have to be skeptical, right? And that's the unfortunate piece. The part that's positive in this whole thing is fighting to the yes, right? And this is one of the things I used to tell my soldiers all the time. Like, hey, as your XO, I might tell you no, but I'm going to teach you how to fight to yes, right? So if somebody says, hey, we're not going to be able to do it right now, or it's yes and or no but, and that no but we can do the following 13 things to move it in the right direction to accomplish that. And if you have that stick to itiveness in you from the beginning, it's much easier to get to that point. Can you learn that? Yes, you can. But typically most people don't learn that through example or experience of, how do I overcome this thing? I've got this thing in front of me. How do I get to the yes? Because no is easy, right? And I think that's in life, in the military, yeah, it's always easy for your boss to say no, right? No, we're not doing that. Okay, well, why aren't we doing it, sir? Why aren't we doing that? Because you said no. Like, that's the stupidest answer I've ever heard. And so I would never I personally would never accept that from any of my leaders. It's like, okay, sir, we're going to fight to the yes, right? So you're telling me that I can't do this. I'm going to show you through action and through deliberate planning that we can get to this point and execute. It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy, but we're going to get there. And
well,
there's
yeah, I mean, I just never gave up. I mean,
yeah,
that's where you're getting at. That's the whole thing. And I still don't give up, or I wouldn't be here today. I mean, I went through the drunk driver hitting me, and he got killed. He got thrown out of his pickup, no seatbelt, run over by his truck. I died again, went up into heaven. I bled out. When I broke my neck when I was 31 and a half, in 4 spots and drowned, and was paralyzed from the shoulders down. I still got the halo cast bolts in my skull and scars and all that crap, and my legs are paralyzed. My right arm, I can flip it around with my shoulder, but my hand doesn't work. My arm doesn't. I've got no tricep. My left arm's pretty good. My left wrist is fused with bone from my right pelvis, and my fingers have been broken, and my knuckles, and my shoulder's been ripped out, and deltoid muscle severed, and bone out. All that crap. But it's like life, Rob. You just can't quit. And that's the
yeah,
message I try to put on. It's always too soon to quit. That gets back to the name of my book. That's the second part, but it's the strength within you. And what did you find out that you have within you, and all the military in particular that are listening? You have a strength within you, whether it was from your DNA, whether your mom, your dad, your grandma, your grandpa, your church, your Sunday school. Maybe it was a class that you took in school and you had a special teacher. Maybe it's just fallen down. Maybe there's an old saying, for somebody that has fallen down and gotten back up is much stronger than someone that's never fallen. And I've fallen probably 1,000 times. I mean, I have destroyed everything. The only parts of my body are my right wrist and my left elbow that haven't been fused, rotted, pinned, broken, replaced, or something.
yeah.
Virtually every other bone, 32 facial fractures. I mean, I can stick my tongue up through my upper palate up into my nasal passage. I mean, it doesn't matter. So and it's the same way with being an entrepreneur. You just can't quit. Dream big and take small steps.
Yeah.
And there's
Wow.
there's so many areas we can go at, and the floor is yours. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's a really good statement. Dream big and take small steps, because I think that's one of the, like, I've worked with a lot of small businesses, And one of the biggest issues that they have is they want to take too big of a bite of the apple, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, I want to show up and I want to dominate this part of the market. Okay, well, how are you going to do that? Do you have infinite capital, infinite amount of product, infinite amount of people? Because, you know, I learned a long time ago in business, it's three ways to get, you know, three things that happen: good, fast, and cheap. And I can only give you two of the three. So which one are we trying to court here? So like, if we know that from the beginning, then we can kind of chart a course. Because if you want something that's really, really high quality, you're not going to get it fast, and it's certainly not going to be cheap, right?
No,
And so,
no.
but young entrepreneurs have that desire, and it's funny that you say that, because it's also it's a veteran transition point too, right? Hey, I've been in the military for 25 years. I'm going to step out. I'm going to walk into this job, and these dudes are going to pay me $250,000 for the next 10 years. Really?
No.
Like, I'd like to meet that person. Actually, I'd like to work for them, because if they're making $250,000 a year, then they could pay me a pretty hefty salary as well. But, you know, it's one of those things that like, if you're coming from the military, you're never paid what you're worth. Never, regardless of, you know, regardless of how hard you worked, how short short a period of time, long a period of time that you were in the military, more than likely, you're not going to be paid what you're worth when you get out. And so there's only two ways for you to do that. You can either work into it over time, right? I can find the right position, find the right company, work hard, and develop, you know, that portfolio to get me that higher paycheck. Or I can start my own company. But if I start my own company, then I'm still going to have to work into, you know, that higher level salary or that high paycheck, right? It doesn't come easy. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned just through observation and through my own experience. It's like, yeah, like when I hear somebody, you know, toss out numbers like, oh man, we're going to have this $100 million IDIQ with the government. Well, how are we going to pull that off? Because what do we have to make them give us $100 million?
Yeah, yeah. And
You know,
it's gotten more difficult too, Rob, because I quit we quit I sold my last company here 2.5 years ago, and I started working with another group, kind of a mentor, advisor, visionary role, and we've done. We're doing very good now. It's been another 2.5 years, but we've been through a lot of R&D. We're working with the government. We've had Camp Blanding has been aboard. We've been to Fort Knox. We've been to Fort Stewart. We did a lot of work with a 7,000 man group with the Third ID at
mhm.
Fort Stewart last be a little over a year ago. I mean, we've been all sorts of Fort Sill. We've been here or there, but what it is an entire, and we're all, it's a disabled veteran small owned business. So
Mhm.
we're part of that group, which is the top rung of the people. And we just signed a NDA with Saab about 2 months ago. So we're part of their group now with Saab out of Sweden. So we have the ability to go into 48 other countries.
Mhm.
And it's not offensive, it's defensive and training. So we don't have to worry about a lot of that stuff. But the government way to procure and become a company of record
Yep.
is very, very important and very
Yeah.
difficult. And when we did about a year ago, when we did the thing at Fort Stewart, that Major General there, his eyes just, I mean, he wanted everything. He wanted it now. And
Mhm.
so he had to wait for the procurement and, your
Yeah.
budgeting system and your order system and all that to come through. Well, they got rid of, he got moved on, and they put a woman in to run the Third ID that I understand is a two-star, but she came out of logistics. Now,
Yeah.
how in the hell does somebody that come in, I don't care if you got 25 stars, you're out of logistics, you should not be running an infantry division. I don't care. I mean,
Yeah.
that's my opinion.
Yeah. And there's so much, like, it's so interesting because, you know, and this is like a literary thing too. And I use pop culture as a reference for a lot of this, right? And I say that because, you know, we have this perception in our society now that if a woman does things that a man does, that makes her a badass boss lady, right? It's like, no, you know, some of the greatest heroines, and I'm saying that intentionally, and you know, I'm gonna get beat about the head and shoulders by the fem Nazis, but the reality of it is, you know, some of the greatest heroines that we know in literature and history are women that leaned into, you know, their God-given challenge, their God-given right? Being a mom.
Oh,
Like,
well, or
yeah,
Joan of Arc. I mean, when you mentioned that right away, I'm thinking Joan of Arc, and she fought the battles. I mean, she went out and did it. But yeah, moms. I mean, there's a, and I'm not downing it. It's just the fact that now it's
yeah,
all switched.
yeah.
But what we did is we took that same the same equipment and we started painting it different colors and we applied it to the fire departments. So
Mhm.
fire departments and all this emergency personnel, law enforcement, we were out. We were at the national SWAT competition, and now we're going back. We've been invited back for this time now. And at first we didn't know what to expect, and they didn't know what to expect. But we've got, and they give you, well, they sell these lanes, these competitive lanes for the SWAT teams to run through
Mhm.
on a national basis, and it's $100,000 for a lane. Well, we got them to give us a lane plus $100,000 worth of billing that we're going to
Mhm.
charge them to
Yeah,
provide other services.
yeah.
But on the way back, they sold people at the Santa Fe, Albuquerque, blah, blah, blah. They ended up at Los Alamos. Well, Los Alamos, they had some people there from the Department of Energy, and the Department of Energy people just blew them away. And DARPA, yeah, I know you know DARPA.
Yeah.
Okay, DARPA is very tight. We just signed a $595,000 contract with DARPA in Teaks with Disaster City up at Texas A&M
Mhm.
uh, 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 Tuesday. Tuesday. I mean, it was proposed last
Yeah.
week, but
Mhm.
and we signed it. But what we do is we can create smoke that's non-toxic. You can fill a room that's say 10 feet wide and 25 or 30 feet long with one smoke cartridge. You cannot find your way through it in 20
Wow.
seconds. You are complete. And we've got sound systems that emulate. I don't care whether it's the wailing of the Allah Akbar and all this crap, or whether it's on a fire scene of
Mhm.
sirens coming in, children screaming, dogs barking,
Yeah.
and it's so overwhelming.
Mhm.
And that's what the whole position is training as a service, because they get lost in it. You can't see. You have to
Yeah.
fight it. In Camp Blanding over in northern Florida, they're blown away with what we've provided.
Yeah.
And it's just a and that's but it you're getting back, and it's not about, and the profit margins are great, but it's not about the money. And that's what I've told these guys here, and I
Yeah.
finally got them convinced. It's about the lives you're saving. It's about the training you're doing. That's what it's about. If you say one firefighter's life in training, how many lives will he save in a 20-year career?
Yeah. Well,
you
and
know
it's one of those discussions we used to always have them, and you know, we dropped a lot of bombs when I was battalion XO in Afghanistan in 2012. And people were like, "Why do you guys use so much ordnance?" It's like, well, I'd rather drop a 200,000-pound bomb or a Hellfire missile or something to that effect than
yeah,
lose a soldier, right? Because a soldier is much, much harder to replace than a bomb, right? And it's simple
yeah.
math, right? It's simple math. And so, like, if I can invest, again, another cliche, the more I sweat in training, the less I bleed,
Oh, the less you
right?
bleed. Yep,
Right. And
100%.
so that's one of the things that, like, again, our cultural thing, and going back to like wanting to have that immediate feedback or that immediate response, right? If we do it right, the immediate response when presented with a tough challenge is like, oh crap, I'm going to fail, right? And then when you realize that you're going to fail, now I can do something about it. I can
Right.
make changes. I can alter my plan. I can use those branches and sequels that are going to get me to the far side of the objective successfully. Whereas if, the first time, and it sucks because we have a bunch of people that don't have the same experience, but the first time you get into a gunfight shouldn't be your first gunfight. The first time you get into a gunfight should be at like a training center where it's safe, where you're being observed, where everything is being recorded. So then I can take all that information, process it, and say, hey, this is where you went right. This is where you went wrong. And even further now today with all the technology that we have, you can really have a data discussion as well, right? So it's like, hey, not only are we tracking how well you shot, but now I've got this computer vision that's tracking your eye movement in the barrel of your weapon, and we
Right.
just flagged your buddy as you enter the building. And
Well,
so you have, all those additional layers too.
You got a lot of that out there, and I got somebody that when we're off here, I'll talk to you about it briefly. But we're working with part of the military's got systems out now through Saab and stuff that you got a little puck on the back of your uniform, and the CEO can be sitting at his desk in California while there's a process going on at Fort Stewart with flights coming in out of Pensacola. I don't know. Don't know any other Air Force bases over there, but that's a Navy base. Sorry, but you know what I'm saying. They're coming in.
Yeah.
Well, did they make a hit? Did they not make a hit? What in this all is played out real time with what we're doing as well. It's all played out real time by using fire lanes. What you just said, going through lanes. You got mortars coming in. Now you got artillery coming in. Who's moving through it the fastest? Who's making the best decisions?
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of times you'll find, and you probably found it in the sandbox, it's like in Vietnam. You at the same time, any war that. If you've got 10 men, probably 3 of them shot 80% of the people, expended the ammo. You've got a couple guys that maybe never fired a round.
Yeah.
Or if they did, it was 1 or 2.
And you got to close that gap, right? It's about it's about getting as many people under the bell curve as you can, right? And
that's where this comes from. And they can tell who did what, who needs more training, where does it go, how does it, and it's all off of that one little puck that can transfer. And here's a guy that, the 1-star sitting out at Fort Ord, and he's paying attention to what's happening on the East Coast, and he knows about the flights coming in. It's an amazing opportunity, but I think that a lot of what we're talking about transfers so much into being an entrepreneur, and it transfers about just being successful in business. And the thing is, it gets back to doing your best with that product or that service and doing it for people. And I'd like to make the comment that I think until I was 30, until I broke my neck, and my whole life changed a lot by then. I mean, before that, it was broken bones and, blood and burns and, all that stuff. And my general comment to that is, Rob, is, sweat dries, blood clots, broken bones heal. Suck it up. And that's what I did. I sucked it up and I pushed forward and I pushed hard and I was hard-headed and I kept moving forward. No matter what it was, I made it work. And I went back. What have I done before? What didn't I do? What can I do to make it better? What can I do this? But I asked a lot of questions. I asked a lot of people, what can we do better for you? What is it what would you do if you were in our shoes? What is it that we're not doing best? And ask a lot of that. But after I was so I pushed my way through, but after I broke my neck, and I think when I went back, and that was the only corporate job I had, was with GTE, which was the 5th largest corporation in America. And part of GTE, when we broke up back in the early 90s, half of GTE became Verizon. The other half became a company called Super Media Arc. So we still have independent phone companies and we still do Yellow Pages. But the point being that you do your best for your person, for the people, for your client. If you do the best you can, I don't care what service you're selling, what product or what combination, if you do the best for your client and help them become better, then you will become better just because it's like the more people you help, the better person you become. And it's great to know a lot of stuff. And I'm going to throw this out too, because I talk about it in my book a little bit, but it's like, I don't care who we are. We all know a lot. But unless I know about Rob and what Rob's needs are and what Rob shows me around his business and what Rob tells me who he's helping and what he's doing and so on, how can I make a proposal to him for my product or my service that I'm trying to sell him? So here's the statement. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's 100% true. And I agree with you on that. And it's one of those things that we talk about all the time. And our company talks mission partners, right? I just want to be a good mission partner. I may not have the solution that can solve your problem today,
right,
but I'm going to point you in the direction of somebody that can help you solve that problem. So when the next iteration comes around, it's like, well, he wasn't able to fix this one problem, but I'm building a team for this next one. So I'm going to go back and talk to Rob and get his company on board, because those guys genuinely care about people and my success. Right. And I think that's the whole experience, man. And that's one of the things that like we all owe, our communities, right? Like, yes, we invested time, energy, and effort in as our younger selves in the military, and that's great. Guess what? Just because you took off the uniform doesn't mean that your service ends. Like, you've got to attach yourself to your community, to your business partners, the people that you work with, your church, like if you run a Boy Scout troop or you run a fishing club or whatever it is, whatever that you're doing, if you genuinely invest in the people around you, because again, and help them reach their highest potential, like your life will be way more fulfilling. Right. And I think that's one of the most difficult pieces of society now is like, how many clicks and likes can I get versus, genuine interactions with other humans.
Well, you mentioned, and I talk about this almost, I talk about it a lot, and I was raised, fortunately, in the years when community was your life. And that didn't matter if being a farmer, our next closest farmer was a mile away or 2 miles away or 5 miles away, or in town, which was 5 miles away. You had a community. You knew people. You understood people. My mom was a teacher. My mom also taught piano lessons. My dad was always on the school board or member of the school board. I mean, member of the school board or president of the school board. He also started other businesses. We helped other people. If your family was sick and you're a little kid, right? And your mom's ill, we made sure that you got a big pot of chicken soup or chicken noodle soup or meatloaf and mashed potatoes and green beans or something, and some cherry cobbler that would help you through your couple of days while you're down or hurt. When my dad had passed away, my dad's been dead. He died very unexpectedly, very early, 67. But I was cried out and we were supposed to start at 7 o'clock. People were there at 3 o'clock, lined up 3 blocks long in this small town. And, a woman came through, Rob, and I'll never forget it. I mean, to the day I know I'll never forget it. And she came through and she said, "Mrs. Setchell, you don't know me, but my husband lost a leg. We lived about 8, 9 miles east of you and 4 miles to the south. And I doubt that you knew us. Now, maybe through, your husband, through Mr. Setchell, he might have mentioned us, but when my husband lost a leg in a corn picker accident, within the next week, he had his cousins, we had other friends, and you all came in, and he took in all of our crops, 3 weeks worth of work for my husband. You did it in 2 days, done.
Wow.
Okay. But here's the thing that got me, and I cried again, and I was cried out. And she said, "Your husband showed up," and this is the thing that's really, really, really important. He showed up between Christmas and New Year's, and we'd already had a blizzard. It was a bad year. This was like approximately 1957. So we had a bad year, and he showed up with $300 in cash to help us with fuel oil that was 3 cents a gallon to heat our house and to buy food, because we hadn't had time to do everything that we needed to do because of my husband's accident. But he showed up and gave me $300 in cash. And she said, that saved our lives.
Yeah.
And they had 3 kids. So, but people don't do that today. It's what I say, that microwave society. I want it now. Let's do it quick. What's the easiest way? Like you said, it's like dating. People can't talk. They can't have a conversation. It's swipe left or swipe right. I like this one. Oh no, I don't. And what do you say to somebody? The loss of communication. How many people can sit and talk like what we've just talked for 10 minutes? Yeah. Much less for a day or 2 or 3, or hold a convention and talk about things.
Yeah. And I think that's why, the people that have success in this space have those long form conversations, because like they're interesting, like they're engrossing, because it's like, hey, I don't get to talk to people or listen to people talk like this.
Yep.
And it's pretty incredible. Like we're coming up on an hour. We're going to have you back on the show, because we could talk a lot more about other things, because like I'm very interested in learning more about your technology, because like I'm a tech nerd. I love that stuff. And I think, technology is a way to accelerate things that we know, but it shouldn't replace the people, right?
Yeah,
And we forget that, like, everybody's nervous about, oh my gosh, AI boom, AI boom, AI boom. And like, we're going to talk about this in another platform with some other folks, but one of the things that I always tell people is like, AI is really good for exposing people that aren't smart, right? Because smart people know how to use it because they don't treat it like a search engine, right? I feed it the information that I want it to learn from so I can develop better products, right? So
right.
smart people develop great. Like, if you see somebody that's got like this super cool video that they've processed and edited and done all the, like, people are making movies with AI right now that, like, they're not great, but they're better than some content that you would see that's produced by a multi-million-dollar facility, right? And you're like, how does this guy do that? Because smart people can leverage the tool to its fullest capacity and beyond what other people are doing. People that are not smart are going to put together, like, you can put together some bogus stuff with AI. Anybody can. Like, you can sit down
Sure.
tonight and like make a goofy video or picture, right? But to make it quality, to make it like, whoa, that's almost photorealistic. That's incredible. You know, Leveraging those tools, it requires two things, right? It requires a little bit of talent, but it also requires time. If you train those models that you're using to do what you need it to do, then you're more successful. And I think that's one of the things that technology is great for, but it's never going to replace humans, right? And I think, being in the technology space, we hear it all the time, like, hey, can I automate this process? Well, yeah, you can, but do you want to? And like, that's the follow-up question. Do
Yeah,
you want to
yeah.
automate this process? Because
Well,
if you
so much of it is, though, to Rob, is the lack of the ability to look someone in the eyes and shake their hand and understand genuine emotion and feeling. You
yeah,
can teach some of this stuff that's coming up, robots or whatever down the road, emotions and feeling, but they're not going to know true emotion and feeling because there's no way to track that for a human. It's that's a God-given thing.
yeah, it's
And
still,
and 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 we need that. We need that community. They're not going to understand community. You can teach them community,
yeah,
but they don't understand that. I mean,
it's it's ones and
it,
zeros. and
yeah,
and and like, I used to tell people all the time, I had the unfortunate pleasure of doing a large scale simulation when I was in college of warfighting. And the two things that you cannot replicate in the sim is Rambo and the crippling coward, right? Because those things don't fall underneath the bell curve. They're not mathematical. You can't fit them underneath a curve. And
yeah,
so it makes it very, very difficult because they're outliers, right? And so those extreme outliers on either side of the bell curve make it very, very difficult to model. And so modeling and simulations become very, very difficult because, like, I can do well in a situation where like 70 to 90% of the people will be successful, right? That's easy. Like training, that's what I want, right? I want to be able to identify, like, okay, this guy's on a completely other level. Hey, we're going to pull him over, give him some instructor training and let him teach. And then the guy that's like, oh, this dude can't shoot at all. All right, we're going to take him from remedial training. But those guys are the outliers. Really, what I want to be able to do is hit the majority of the formation with the least amount of time, effort, and efficiency possible, because that's going to lead to success, right? Me focusing on, and we say it all the time, you're going to spend 90% of your time on 10% of your soldiers, which is true,
yeah.
right? Those are the hardcores, right? You don't have to worry about the guy that's super squared away. You don't have to worry about everybody that gets up every day and
Mhm.
does what they're supposed to do. It's that 2% that's like, God, man, like, why do I have to deal with this guy? You know, but it's the same thing in business, right? There's problem sets that are like,
It's
hey,
it's
look,
it's it may even be worse in business because it may not be life and death, but in a way it is. Is it
mm,
life and death of the business? Is life and death of that family, that individual? But there's so much out there and there's so much opportunity. People just have to believe in themselves. They have to experience the downtimes and get through that stuff to get through the adversities that they're going to face. And it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if you've ever been in the service or not been in the service to a
yeah,
degree, but the ones that have been, we're a very, very small percentage. especially the ones that really want to take it out and do something with it. Because you get a lot of people, I don't care what branch it's in, you get some out and they don't care. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to do anything about it. They want a job. They're going to go out and, well, it's kind of hard to get a job anymore that you get one job and you stay with it your whole life. It's generally more, you're going to have to transition. And I've had to transition multiple times. I mean, 25, 30 times because of different surgeries and different problems and different things that I can or cannot do, and I've had to adapt, and that's, adapt and overcome, you got to do that. It's just, so, but yeah, I need to get back on with you, and I've got something else. We'll chat for a few minutes but yeah, I'll let you wrap up and do what you need to do, brother. And
okay, for sure.
Okay.
Hey, so the name of the book is The Strength Within You. It's Always Too Soon to Quit. We'll put all that stuff in the podcast description. We'll put all of Jay's information so you can find him online. Hey, this has been a great conversation. I enjoyed these. I love this conversation. This has been really good. It's interesting because we're talking about transition. We're talking about technology, two things that I'm very passionate about. And doggone it, you're just a great person, and I think that ultimately at the end of the day, that's what we all want to be, right? It's all about capitalizing on our human potential, and how you do that varies from person to person. It's unique to you, but your success doesn't necessarily mean that, success doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to make $1 million. Doesn't mean that. Success is defined by, the people that you help. And I think that
very, very much.
I think that's more important than any check that anybody could cut. I would rather have somebody say wow, that guy would stop and help anyone, rather than oh, he died sitting on a big pile of money.
Yep.
But for Philosophy from the Frontline, this is episode 110 with Jay Setchell, and we'll see you guys on the high ground. Thanks.
We'll see you later. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Philosophy from the Frontline. We hope today's conversation gave you valuable insights into the journey of veterans transitioning into the world of small business. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It helps more people find us and supports our mission to empower veteran entrepreneurs. Stay connected with us on social media and visit our website for more resources, tips, and episodes. Remember, your service doesn't end when you take off the uniform. Your next mission is just beginning. Until next time, keep pushing forward, stay resilient, and turn your battle-tested skills into business success. This has been Philosophy from the Frontline, and we'll see you on the high ground. Thanks.